Good evening, big crowd. I like to see big crowds. We're going to get right into our presentations this evening. The first is a recognition for some Cape-Girardeau police officers for outstanding performance. And Scott?
Yes, I have the privilege tonight to just introduce our Chief Blair, who will be coming forward. Certainly, an incident happened several months ago, and where in a time when deadly force was used, and of course that's something to take very seriously and is investigated by outside agencies and all that. So I always say what they do is they take months of poring over everything. And of course, with body cams, we have everything that went on. And they take months to look over that to determine the actions that officers took and made decisions about in less than a second. And I think we have good news to report tonight. Wes?
Absolutely, we do. I would like to ask Sergeant Blanner, Corporal Farrow, Officer Hyatt, and Officer Owens to come join me up front here. If y'all would just come stand up here. This is the part they hate the worst. They will run into gunfire. If you tell them they got to come stand in front of people and do a presentation, they don't care for it much. So I just kind of give you a brief story. On February the 19th, it was a Tuesday night. It was pouring rain. It was very cold outside. These officers received a call of a man chasing a woman down the street with a gun in one of our neighborhoods. Without hesitation, as we all do, they responded to that, not knowing exactly what they were going to encounter, but knowing that they were going to handle it once they got there and go about the rest of their shift. Well, they get there and they find the man standing over a woman laying on the ground with what they believe to be a firearm in his hand. Not knowing at the time that he'd already shot her, but they did know that he was standing there with the gun pointed at her as she's laying on the ground. They gave him several commands to drop the gun, didn't comply. When he moved the gun in a direction that they believed to be in a threatening manner, they opened fire and subsequently shot the gentleman, saving the woman's life. Then, of course, they immediately started tending first aid to both the woman who had been shot by her estranged husband, what we had later found out, and to the suspect as well, because that's what we do as police officers. We switch roles from second to second to second. We later found out that this was an estranged husband who had broken into his former wife's home, and as she was attempting to flee the home, he had shot her. Glad to report that she's in good condition and is doing as well as anyone can be that's been through something that is as traumatic as that. The suspect, I believe, just recently even went back into the hospital. He still has some complications from his injuries. And I just want to say we spend a lot of time in our nation talking, and there's been a lot of debate over the last few years about should cops be warriors or should they be guardians, and warrior seems too tough. Well, I want to submit to you that these officers are both. We have guardians in our community. Our officers are guardians every day. We take care of public safety in our community. We're caretakers of that. School teachers are guardians. Security guards are guardians at our malls. Every one of us has a guardian role, and the majority of the time we have a guardian role. But if somebody is standing over one of my family members or one of my friends about to end their life, I don't want a guardian coming down the street. I want a warrior coming down the street to take care of my family. And that's what these guys were that night. They were warriors. And then immediately switched back into that guardian role and began assessing aid to somebody who could very well have taken their lives too. So I just want to commend these officers in front of you and just bring to you the attention of the difficult work that they do proudly every single day for our communities. Very proud of you, gentlemen. work.
They have to go to work. Gentlemen, thank you, and I'm sure that the family, thanks you also. So thank you for your good work. Our second item this evening, our second presentation, or recognition really, is recognition of the Cape Catfish baseball team. We'll, I'll have Mark Hogan, Jim Limbaugh, and Cindy Gannon come up. First, I had a feeling Andy and Denise would not be here, but we owe a debt of gratitude to Andy and Denise Patel for their investment in not only this baseball team, but our city. You three did an outstanding job of securing talent, and managing the team, and getting things off the ground. I said to you earlier, I can't imagine the stress involved with trying to get this organized and get all this stuff done, not only with the schedule, but securing the players, and securing close families, and all of the stuff that was involved in getting this first season off the ground. You've laid the groundwork. I said your job might be easier, and Cindy kind of shook her head no. But we thank you for your dedication. We thank you for all you've done to bring all this to Cape Girardeau. It was a real festive time. That first game was just unreal. The crowd was unreal. They had great crowds every game, I think. Not as much during the week. Andy didn't like that much. He figured every crowd ought to be like that every night. But even the people who sat on Cherry Hill and didn't really partake of all the stuff that was going on enjoyed it and loved it. And we just thank you very much for what you've done for our city and for all these young men that have got the opportunity to play baseball in a wooden bat league, the scouts that come, and the economic impact. It's difficult to measure like it is with an event that comes here for a day or for a couple of days, because it goes on all season and they don't keep track of that. But with all the scouts that were here, with all the families that were here, the fans that came from out of town, it's just going to get better as time goes on. We thank you and want to recognize all of you for what you've done. Thank you.
Let me, Mayor, can I say a couple things?
I want you to
None of this would have happened were it not for the choreography that occurred between Parks and Rec, between the city, to a lesser extent the university. Everybody got involved, and in fact, the former Mayor Rediger talked to Dennis Bastian, talked to Andy Sawyers. Andy Sawyers talked to Scott. Scott talks to Harry Rediger. And then, you know, it sounds a little corny, but the rest they say is history. But to your point earlier, it would not have occurred without the philanthropic spirit of Andy and Denise Patel. These folks moved to Cape Girardeau about 6.5 years ago from West Palm Beach, Florida. First time I met them, I said, why? But they truly have a altruistic spirit about Cape Girardeau. Otherwise, and they truly put their money where their mouth is. And it was just frankly a great experience, and Andy does not meddle. Anissa doesn't meddle, they let Hogue and Cindy do the deal, and it was, who'd have thunk it, frankly, that we set a record right out of the gate, and you know, I think we created a monster and it still has to be fed. But anyway, it was a great experience for us, and the off-balance sheet part of this is that a lot of people that had never been in Cape Girardeau came to Cape Girardeau to watch the product on the field, and to a person, they talked about what a nice community this is, and so we all should be thankful for that. So anyway, thank you all.
Most wins ever in the history of the Prospect League, your first season.
Yeah.
You know, you got in the playoffs. Unfortunately, you didn't win it, but the other team had two great pitchers thrown at you, and that makes all the difference in the world. But I heard comments from host families that they were devastated when the players left. You know, they liked them. They felt like part of their family. You know, I heard comments from some of the players that players on other teams and say, hey, I want to come to Cape next year. So, hope you got a tough job ahead of you, get the team next year, but again, thank you for all your efforts and what you've done, and I can only see better things down the road.
We're hopeful. Thank you all.
Our next recognition is a kind of a unique group. 5 years ago, 2014, we had a Corvette Caravan come through town, and some of the people that were here then from California came back this time, and they brought a lot of friends with them, a lot of people with them. It's hard to believe that people would transport their Corvettes from Hawaii to the States and then drive them here to Cape Girardeau. Some people say Corvette people are crazy.
A little bit.
A little bit.
They're rich.
But there were approximately 800 Corvettes here, 2 per car. That's about 1,600 people. The economic impact was, they're guesstimating about $180,000 for one afternoon or evening. And I told Rick, I said, I got up the next morning, I had a meeting at My Day's Cheesecake, and there were 20 Corvettes in a parking lot. I went in, and they were in there eating breakfast before they met up and, took off. It's unbelievable. And I want to recognize Rick Essner, who's president of the Corvettes of Southeast Missouri, Reggie Swan, who's still chair of this event. There's so many other people, Danny Essner with River City Riders in Old Town Cape, Craig Wilson, Craig Wilson, Jim Walton, Bill Cheek, and Dennis Essner are also with Corvettes of Southeast Missouri. Dave Jackson, Captain IT Car Club, of course Brenda Newman, Elisa Ferris, and Emily Vines, and Jordan Rubel with Visit Cape and Old Town Cape helped them put this all together, and it was fantastic. The parade down Broadway had 100 local Corvettes. There were another 100 or so that were already down there that didn't want to drive down Broadway. Maybe they thought it was going to take too long or be too crowded, I don't know.
They're busy.
Or busy. But, I mean, they had Corvettes up and down Water Street, Main Street, Spanish Street. The people were very, very friendly. They commented innumerable times about how they love Cape Girardeau. They want to come back. They want to do this again. So I hope you all are still hanging around and ready to organize this in 5 years again. So don't go anywhere. At this point, I want to turn it over to Rick, who wants to say a few words, and he's got a short video he's going to show us about the event. And I just want to say thanks, guys and gals. It was a super event. For just a one-day thing, it was amazing. Rick?
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, everyone stand up here with our planning committee. We've been meeting for over a year and a half to plan this, and you named just about everybody with it. Don't forget Brad. He was fantastic working with us for the city parks, everybody. But we left you a complimentary shirt and it's called a dash plaque. I gave all of the people, the Corvette owners that came in, a free T-shirt and dash plaques. A lot of that, biggest sponsor was Al Casino. They were just phenomenal on every side. But we got a lot of other sponsors, hotels, just really everybody in town, car parts places, you name it. So that part was just awesome. The city of Cape, though, really speaks for itself. Like you said, the friendliest. Anything we heard from everybody that came here is just how friendly, how nice they were treated. And no, they're not all rich.
Very rich, not 1%.
No, they're not. But we had to actually start a club here about a year and a half ago. We're up to 118 members already, and growing fast. So a lot of good people in this area volunteered. The car clubs, like you said, with the River City Riders, the Cape Capall, Antique Car Club, all of those, their people helped. So everybody chipped in and just to make this thing happen. So again, I want to thank the city. I want to thank our volunteers. I want to thank our planning team who worked all through the year. a year and a half or so here now to just make this thing happen, and I hope we're around in 5 years too, but we'll see, but again, they do this thing every 5 years, so they'll be here in 2024. So I appreciate it. I did make a short video here, if it just gives you a flavor. If you didn't get to go, it gives you a little bit of a flavor of the event, both Tuesday night and as well as Wednesday morning when they departed about 600 car bits off the parking lot at West Park Mall. So the police department, again, handled it just expertly as always. So Brad and all his fellow officers were just fantastic for the whole thing. So again, if you want to start that, I appreciate it. don't go to the same city twice. They set up routes every time they do this. And they go, and they usually don't go to the same place twice, but they go through, and they have people actually came through here, I guess 3 times at least, and made trip, their pre-trip. They take the whole trip, and they check out cities and where they're gonna park, where they're gonna stay, throughout the country to get, or at least the western half of the United States, to get to Bowling Green, Kentucky for the 25th, for the anniversary of the Caravan Museum. And they came here again in 2014, they came back here. They came back here because if you look on their website from 14, they said this was the highlight of their trip then. And they said, we just basically even made it better. So I'm pretty sure they'll be back in 2024. So back then, they had in 14, they had about 350. We had a total of about 350 cars versus 800. So they're kind of like this time, they've given us, we asked them how we can improve it. One of the captains said, well, as soon as they appoint the captains about 3 years out, about 2 years from now, he said, get hold of the captains and give them the information on what you're doing. He said, you have 2 or 3 times as many. And we're like, I don't know what we do with them. I have no idea where we're put them, but thank you all very much. Thank the city of Cape Girardeau. We appreciate everybody's help, and especially our team and our volunteers. Thank you.
I really appreciate you being here and your dedication, and it's really not a lot to cake for this. It was a little short event, but we're looking forward to 2024. Thanks, appreciate it. At this time, I think Mark Lanzotti's got a presentation about the Cape Central Baseball and Softball Complex renovation.
Appreciate it, guys. Kind of odd standing over here after all the viewers sitting there.
Yeah.
Didn't realize how good you really look up there. Take advantage.
Here he goes.
A couple of things before I start I want to be clear about. This is a citizen initiative meeting. Started this a year and a half ago. And so this is a citizen making a presentation. So there are things in this that I created. I don't want us to try to bind the council, and I'm not trying to bind the school board with numbers and things like that. These are just concepts that are being presented. But, you know, it's funny, I sat here listening to what I just listened to, and I realized the catfish, how great, thanks for scheduling on tonight, kind of a cool precursor, because this is the exact same topic. Secondly, though, and then, of course, the caravan, not related to baseball, but I think both of them have something in common. Both of them required cooperation. Both of them, on their first blush, required partnership. And both of them required bold steps and unique ways of thinking. And so I look back at those, and I remember the first Corvette Caravan that came in and how we needed to do some things at the city, and that required us to stretch a little bit beyond our comfort zone. And now here we are celebrating another win in that regard. And then the catfish coming and what needed to be done at Capitol Hall, and how that partnership with the university and even a quasi-private group with the catfish, and how that's turned into a winner. And I thought, cool, what a great setup, because this is exactly what I'm talking about here, except I think mine's even easier. Mine's easier because this is not about a public versus public with private. This is public with public. And I have been a passionate fan of this for quite some time. So when I sat on the council, there were conversations about leveraging resources and leveraging assets and with the school district and any other public entity to try to expand those limited tax dollars that are available. And I also coached quite a bit of baseball growing up, and was actually actively coaching that baseball when there was a major shift in youth baseball in Cape. And that shift came when I started. We played in the Noon Optimist League, and we played for SEBA, which was another private group. And during my coaching time, then that changed from private, if you will, run, group run, club run, to professionally run by the Parks and Rec staff. And they took over all aspects of youth baseball. And not surprisingly, we know we have a great Parks and Rec staff. Guess what? They've succeeded. They did better than the weekend warriors, the parents like myself who tried to run a baseball league, and those guys, they did it really well. And ironically, we're here as a victim in some levels of our own success being the catfish, our own success being what we've done at Capitol Hall, and our own success by growing access to youth sports, and then own success from the council's investments at Shawnee. And so I put together this little program about an opportunity that a year and a half ago kind of came to me, and I thought about putting some folks together and see if we could kind of get a partnership going and leveraging some of those resources, city resources with school district resources, and kind of maybe threw a little weight around and got a meeting put together, and maybe the idea was decent enough that it had legs, and here we are a year and a half from now. So I want to tell you a story about what we've done here to get to this point here today, and what we're looking for, or what I'm suggesting might be a good idea. And at the end of it, I'm going to ask you, that if you guys think it is to give staff some instruction to move forward with just talking additionally in detail with that with the school district at the end. So I'm here today to put a presentation together about a partnership, a ball field partnership between Cape High School, or the school district, and the city of Cape. And I think one of the key things about this, and when you look at this from analyzing it from your perspective, you might not have the passion for baseball. You might not really have an appreciation for what some of the struggles are locally. But I know everybody here wants to be good stewards of taxpayer funds. And I think this, when you look at this and peel this back, it's really a good way, a good utilization of taxpayer resources. And so it leverages those resources, and it brings a better facility to the city for both the school district and the city. So, I'm supposed to turn this on and use it, right? Or can I just not?
I got you.
Change the page. All right, how about that?
Gotcha.
So, what are some of the current issues with baseball and softball in the city? And I'll use those terms interchangeably. As I said, we're a victim of our own success. Our school districts, or our Parks and Rec department has been running this, and they're increasing the number of kids. We've invested into Shawnee, as you can see. And those improvements at Shawnee have increased field quality play, which has increased demand, which means we can basically charge more, and if we had more, we could sell more. And selling more in that concept is weekend tournaments. Those weekend tournaments are drawing from a farther and farther distance away because the field quality is higher, and that means heads and beds on the weekend nights in our town. So more fields allows for more capacity, which allows for more folks in town. I heard from folks this summer, or this spring, a little wet, right? Once it gets rain out a couple of times at arena, now you can't find any time to practice. And practice times are extremely limited because we don't have the fields available to us to run our youth recreational programming on it. And this proposal essentially attempts to add fields. And then for the older kids that I'm talking about, the 15 to 18-year-old kids, American Legion Baseball, sort of apple pie and 4th of July, kind of been around forever. They've essentially got kicked out of Capitol Hall. And I get it, because the Catfish, what a great thing to have. But the Catfish took 20 some odd dates away. Cape Legion Baseball used to play there. Senior Legion, Junior Legion. Senior Legion did have some access. Junior Legion effectively did not. And so essentially Legion's been displaced out of Capitol Hall public facility. And again, it's a win because of victory that happens, but it is an effect on it. The net result is demand is outstripping the resources, and some of our field qualities are really starting to be pretty subpar. And especially from the city standpoint, the ball fields in arena are in pretty bad shape. I thought, what better timing to give this presentation than the wrap on the fair when it turns, popcorn dry out there. I'm sure those fields are looking good. In case you want to really know what they look like after the fair, thank you, Southeast Missourian, because I found an old picture. Look at that picture. That's one of your that's your best ball field in arena. And in the background is the backstop. That's one of the best facilities. That's the softball field there at the corner where you turn out in front of arena. And the outfield is trampled, the grass is gone, and the Tilt-A-Whirl's been set up there. And it looks like this year it might not have rained either. So, but all the years it rains, then you can add the ruts of the 18-wheelers hauling it out, and then city staff has to fix it and fix the ruts, and that's every year. So you can't invest in those fields. You can't make those fields really what they need to be to hold competition play. Yeah, sure. I mean, the T-ball field's down on the end. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about 10, 11, 12-year-old baseball. That's what plays at arena. We're talking about girls softball. That's what plays at arena. All of those fields get utilized for multiple purposes. And so I guess birds of a feather flock together. CHS ball field, it has its own set of issues, no doubt. So when the high school was built, I think politely we'll say approximately, was it 12 years ago, Jeff? Roughly 15? 17, and I'm still only 40. So good to know. But resources a little bit limited, facilities out there are lacking. Through the years, the school districts have seen sort of efforts been made, well-intentioned efforts to sort of make additions to that ball field complex, whether it be the baseball field, the band, or softball. But they lacked a cohesive purpose and placement. And then as far as the baseball field goes, is the playing surface there lacks adequate drainage. Fan seating, sight lines aren't really any good. And I think we need to look at what the our local other schools have in terms of what represents really what is the new standard in a high school baseball field. So the next page over is an aerial Google Earth picture of what essentially the ball field complex looks like at Central High School. And so from moving from left to right, you've got essentially a softball practice field and the softball varsity field with the really cool berm feature that is a neat deal. And then you have some free space there, and that's where the band practices in the fall. They have a little tower structure, and the marching band works there in the fall. And you have a JV practice field, and then you've got your varsity baseball field on the far right. Best picture I could find that really shows there's really nothing there but some gravel parking lots and some chain link fence. And if you can look at the baseball fields and the softball fields and tell that the grass probably isn't in the best of shape either. And that was just an aerial photo that we took offline. So if you turn the page though, you get a general idea of what Notre Dame's facility looks like. Okay? So that looks a little more appealing. Mostly I'd like to focus on some of the buildings that are around there, but if you look at the baseball field and then below it is the softball field, between the two is a blue roof building. That is their indoor batting cage and pitching facilities. If you come back to the behind home plate, that's essentially their grandstand where they have back seats with cup holders and a press box. And then they have, the half brick wall with the poles and the netting and stuff. That's theirs. Then not quite as involved down on the softball field, but once again, a much better fan experience there. They have their own press box. They have their own seating that is built into the structure. And that, I think, really is what it looks like now for most high school facilities. Jackson's facility, similar to this one at the Whitey Herzog Field. I can tell you that this summer we've been with Legion in fall baseball. We've been to some other high school facilities. If you want to see the Taj Mahal, go to Branson. They've got 2 or 3 fields. They're turf. They're all together. Their indoor batting facility looks like it may as well have a Major League Baseball team on it. It's unreal. So I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did. It's beautiful though. So anyhow, so so what do you do in a situation like this? And this is where I kind of took maybe a little bit of a lead, and I approached the school district, and I approached PDS, who works with the city, and the city planning service, who at the time was working at Capitol Hall, trying to get Capitol Hall ready for the catfish. And I suggested maybe that we all get together and meet with the school administration, city administration, with Scott, myself, and the PDS folks, and ask PDS to say what would it take to take the school district through essentially a master plan development and to kind of identify these issues and not just make it one person saying, this isn't right. I know that the scoreboard should go over there and that kind of stuff, and go through that whole process. And ultimately, PDS put a proposal together that was adopted, and the school board went with it. Thanks, Jeff, and your crew. Great job. So they took the band, they took the softball folks, all the stakeholders, the baseball folks through this process, and presented ultimately a master plan development for that ball field complex. And it's a water code, and they put some cost estimates with it. And that next page is essentially what you're seeing here, is how the vision was from PDS and working with those stakeholders to develop a coherent space. And so what you see is they've kept the general layout in the sense that the varsity softball field and the varsity baseball field didn't move, and that's because they have lights and they have power and drainage or pure water and stuff there. But they've added some features that we see in more typical of a high school facility, and that is indoor batting is available next to the varsity baseball field. They've created practice fields with the space, eliminated the big JV field, which has really been cumbersome to have to use to keep usable, because it requires it to be dragged, it requires it to be mowed. And with the addition of lights out there at Central, about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, the need for that secondary JV field really began to fall off, and in fact, it's not been utilized very much. You can see that we've taken the band space that was originally at the back of the girls' softball facility, and we've reorientated that now, and that's actually being shown in turf. It's because on the long-term replacement plans for the football stadium, turf has to be changed, right, Josh? Something has to be done, have to be changed out periodically, and so it's about
life
stage
cycle on
life cycle on the turf, but it's still great for the band. And so we talked to the band, hey, 20-yard line to 20-yard line, we're going to create their own great little practice area. And then you see some additions with the dugouts at both the varsity baseball and the varsity softball, and you still have the practice fields as you're moving. And then you've got this cohesive walking trail system, and then it's actually kind of cool technical thing, but in the varsity field, the batter's eye, that's the area that's behind center field, is essentially a roadway, which is a bit of a challenge when you're trying to hit a curveball and a car drives by with its headlights on. But nonetheless, they've looked at and actually suggested incorporating that berm feature that was accidentally left with the softball field. It turned out to be a huge hit. They're actually going to create it for the baseball field and create actually a walkway and actually target it towards the student section, seating section, to give that. The high school students never want to sit with parents and vice versa, kind of, so give them a place out there. Keep the existing concession stand in its location because it already has sewer lines, it already has facilities in it. And so that was the plan that was ultimately developed. So, so what we're here today is to talk about what the school district needs and what the city needs. And that's where I think there's some really big common ground that we can work towards and maybe partner on this plan. The city, I think, certainly identified that they have a need for 5 to 8 additional baseball fields, and I think the voters have agreed with that immediate need by the inclusion in PRS2 and ultimately the voter approval of that project in this, voter approval of PRS2. And so I want to stress, though, this is not intended to be a switch. Okay, this is intended to be a partnership that would help bridge us to that time period where where that facility can be built at a later date, instead of having to be a lot of bonding early and trying to fill that need immediately. This partnership allows and gives us sort of a little bit of a relief valve because it gives access to fields and will give the city time to do that and time to save that bonding cost by doing and approaching that as a PAYGO project as opposed to a bonding project. And then I think really, it probably should have made this bigger because I think this is probably the most salient point. The city basically runs recreational baseball and summer tournament baseball. It runs those from about May 15th until about August 1st. The school district runs high school baseball, and they start that about February 15th, March 1st-ish, and they run till about May 15th. And then they pick back up with fall softball about August 15th, and then they go until the snow falls and then it's over, right? And then everybody gets off their baseball fields and nobody does anything with them. So why would, those are the prime lead times. There ain't but a week of overlap in all of that. So why would the city be building its own fields so that it could run its programming on them for 90 days? And then the school district go out there and build its own new fields so they can run their program on 90 days when the 90 days aren't even the same period of time. And that's what this point is about the needs in May, June, July, and into early August, whereas the school district needs are completely out of phase with that. They're before that and slightly after that. So it really looked like it screams for a partnership. With more field access, more fields makes the rec activities they're able to program. We're able to accommodate rainouts. We're able to host bigger tournaments and use it as overflow for Shawnee. We can also then gives us the ability to begin phasing out the utilization of the arena fields. And I don't think it's any great surprise, but arena, those fields have always been a struggle. They're a struggle to get back up to playing shape. I mean, just the metal detectors to make sure there's not dangerous things have to be checked in. This is a tough deal to run a field on that. It also gives arena the ability to expand and grow in the areas that this council and future councils may want to take it. There's been a lot of conversation about what do you do with arena moving forward. It then also gives Legion baseball, Babe Ruth baseball, and even the older recreational programming, a quality field to replace the lost dates and access to town hall. So I say, hey, it's a prudent use of taxpayer dollars. Hey, go ahead. Yeah.
Prudent,
I think you're not driving.
sorry.
So prudent use of taxpayer dollars. This is one of those numbers, 50% my number, okay? No deal cut, just, these are really, because there's two entities that are gonna use it about the exact same amount of time. So, you know, it looks like it's cost savings in terms of operational cost, mowing cost, you know, the building cost and the facility costs are at least half. There's no site acquisition in this fee in this proposal. If you were gonna build more fields, one of the first things you're gonna have to do is figure out where you're gonna build them, and you're gonna have to buy that space. In this particular situation, this partnership, the city is getting access to those fields and getting that access for no cost, and it already has lighting, it already has sewer lines, it already has power and water. It also gives us certainly the ability to host larger tournaments, more fields, more revenue, more hotel room, etc. We know how that works. So what does it take to rescue a baseball field? This is the number. So essentially, based upon PDS estimations, it's about $1.5 million for the complete renovation of the Central High baseball field. And that baseball field renovation includes the removal of its existing soil base that doesn't drain water. It includes the removal of the chain link monstrosity fences. And it includes the installation of bleachers, dugouts, a new playing surface that drains water like the ones you have currently at Shawnee, and any other features that you see essentially on playing surface and fan experience. And so that's what I'm essentially here proposing is if the city could invest that $1.5 million, then into the renovation of the CHS baseball fields, the school district then, you know, commits to essentially trying to complete this master plan that they've adopted, and they've identified our facilities here are inadequate for softball, for band, for baseball, and we need to really step up. And so we wanted a master plan which the school board adopted. So Jeff and his group on August 26th said, this is it, I love it, this is what we're going to do when we have resources, when we have time. And so with the city's investment, essentially the city will get, this is the proposal I've put together, access utilization for programming on those 4 ball fields at Central High School. So right now that gives you access and programming to 2 10 to 12-year-old fields, the smaller fields like the softball size. And then it gives you programming on essentially the 2 full-size fields. When the whole program is done, you'll end up with essentially 3 of the smaller fields, the 10 to 12 fields, which are the fields that have the highest level of need. And you have still have the varsity field there to run programming on. The city gets a shovel-ready site. All it needs to do is plant grass, install bleachers, and play ball. The site has utilities in place, has a concession stands already built, the bathrooms are already there. This is not something to gloss over. To get it to that point, you'd be spending $1 million or more anyway. And I think that the city and the school district could pay essentially equal on the maintenance cost because each one of them's got about a 90-day use cycle. They can each mow it when they need it. They can each line it when they need it. The net result, though, is that if 2 people are doing something for 90 days apiece, they're essentially, instead of each doing their own thing, we're saving a ton of taxpayers' money. And so back to my, my taxpayer savings. And then I think it's a little more complicated of a thought to get your head around, but the original 5-to-8 ball field complex was intended to be a bonded project. Well, bonding costs money. If this project is a way that we can delay the need to bond that project 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years out to the latter half of the PRS2 program, that gives you the ability to handle those 5 to 8 fields at that point as a pay-go project, meaning you're not going to pay any bonding costs. And it gives you time to develop those partnerships, whatever may come about, whatever future council may decide. And so this allows us that bonding savings, I think, in and of itself. If you went to go bond this right now, you're going to be spending about that much to build that 5 to 8 youth ball field complex. You'd be spending about as much as we're investing right here. And you would not end up with more access. And you would end up with just the used fields. You wouldn't have a replacement for your city, for your citizens in the city that played, that Legion baseball, which is ninth grade, junior Legion, and senior Legion. So ninth grade, sophomores, and then you got your juniors and seniors. I mean, those folks are all essentially homeless because the catfish are kicking butt, and that's great. And so that's great, but they're out. And then you also have, and you used to run, back in the day, we'd run our state and regional tournaments out at Shawnee for Cal Ripken, which is your rec sanctioning organization. And then we would move championship games and premier games over to Capahaw, and you still don't have that ability to do it either, which was always a plus when we were hosting regional and state tournaments by having the ability to utilize Capahaw to play at. It was kind of a cool pitch to those folks. And so, I mean, those are bringing in 10, 12 teams for those tournaments every year that you can get them. So I'm asking the council here to say yes to save taxpayers' dollars, to address a need that we all know exists in terms of the need for additional baseball fields. Ask yourself, is there a need for additional field programming space? I think that's a yes. That's a yes from the fact it was included in PRS2. That's a yes from the fact that the voters said, yes, we need this done. And will those 4 fields access at Central High School help fill that need? And the answer is obviously yes. I mean, it gives you more places to put play on in the summertime. You gotta figure out what the finances look like and how to do that. I'm not here telling you how to make that happen. I'm here asking you to instruct staff to look into that and report back in about 60 days about what that might look like. And if the council gives that sort of positive blessing to go deeper on this, talk with the school district about what the maintenance might look like, how they might approach it, how they might go about funding it, with a commitment to be back in here about 60 days or so to maybe give it a final thumbs up, thumbs down. I think that the school district is willing, with that bit of knowledge, to start to mobilize its own ability to generate resources through the foundation, through I'm learning things like there's tax credits that can be sold, there's private funding sources out there that have already committed to make donations to this field last year, and they've been held at bay because this project has been kind of in the works, or this has been going on, and I don't know the scope of what those folks are willing to do, but I've got a gorgeous watercolor to go sell them on, and I pity the poor guy who get this house and not leave him, but he'll leave with something, so, he's out there too. So I'd like to see it back in front of council, in roughly 60 days or so. And the reason for that timeline is that we'd love to shoot for a first shovel turn in June of 2020. And so we're going to need to that lets us play on that beginning in spring of 2021. So, but back here, if we can put that together, we can give us time to let the program, or let the contracts, or however we go about doing that kind of stuff, and maybe get that done. So I want to say thanks for your time. I want to say thanks for Scott for going through this and answering the phone of an old washed up council member who called and said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't you come listen to it? He did. So he was on the clock though, so I don't know if you should have counted those as work hours. But and for Neil for listening to that, starting Jeff, you and your group having a vision to go through this, and Josh for helping out with everything he did. So I hope that we can move forward with that. Questions?
Thanks, Mark. Do you have any questions?
Has there been any discussion about what you guys are gonna do at middle school, junior high? I know you guys have just started.
Citizen, yes, bringing this here in terms of what the middle, I don't know about, I don't want to speak for what the school district may be doing there, but there are 2 fields there as well.
Right.
There is a softball field there because, I didn't even bring this up, but growth in baseball has expanded to the junior high. Junior high is running 7th and 8th grade baseball, and it's also running 7th and 8th grade girls softball. So the school district has been revitalizing, if you will, the old central field.
Yeah.
And has also installed a brand new field there at, a brand new softball field there on the junior high campus as well. So,
Is it, I know you're saying 2021, and obviously after something like that, are there any goals or on phases?
the first start would be with a commitment with the city.
Right.
to then mobilize what resources the school district could come up and have. And I can't speak for them. I mean, I've just been marshaling this through maybe with my own energies. I mean, I'm paid to print these out today too, you know, so it's,
I understand.
you
I
know,
was just-
so, but I do think everybody recognizes it. Some of the things lend itself to staging and sequencing because you have to accommodate, you can't wipe out 2 softball fields simultaneously because then you don't have a place to put them for a year. So, you know, there'll be growing pains to this process. If you started turning dirt on this after the varsity season this year, they wouldn't really be on it for another full year, and so then that probably brings some life back into JV and scheduling at all site locations. The utilization of the replacement turf for the band practice area, can't go cut the middle of the ball field out because we found the money, but, you know, but in terms of, you know, what can be done in the future, I think with all organizations, the city's organization, the school district's organization, a little bit inappropriate to commit that 5 years from now we're going to spend this much money because we don't know if we're going to still be on the council, and the council at that time may not do it. But on the same regard, it's been adopted by the school board. The school board is committed to this. The school board spent their own money to go through this process. They spent real money to go through this process. So, you know, when they got it, they love it, they liked it enough to say, yes, let's try to figure out how to make that happen. So when they have additional paving dollars, you can pave a parking lot because now you know where to put it. When they have the ability, where a donor may step forward and say, I'd like to put some money on it because I want to name this after my mother who was a clarinet band player. Well, they have a place to put it now. So, you know, and so I think we're on the first, you know, this is essentially the first public presentation of this. I kind of feel like I'm letting the tiger out of the cage, and I hope that we can make this thing go like a brush fire, you know, but we couldn't really do it unless we knew we had a big partner on board to jump and tackle that sort of keystone piece of the field. The other parts of it stage just fine. Ironically, and I don't know if it's why, but the varsity girls softball field playing surface is in much better shape. It's got better dirt. I don't know if the bulldozers left more there or scraped less or scraped more or whatnot, but that field actually plays pretty well. And if you think about it, drainage in softball is not that big a deal because they started play on August 15th, popcorn dry, and it hasn't rained but what, an inch of rain since then, and it won't rain hardly much until they finish their season on October 1st and they're done. Baseball's a complete polar opposite. They're coming out in February and it's wet when they start and it's cold. And so having the ability to play on that, it requires a little more sophisticated field of drainage and stuff. So I don't mean to dodge the question, but
No, I got it. I got it.
Do you foresee this being open for public use when under the city's kind of tutelage?
That's the intent. The intent is to say, hey, look, we're backing off, the school's done, and then they can begin their own programming on it, which is, when I say programming on it, I mean if they need to put rec games on it, if they want to use it for a weekend tournament, if they had rainouts this week and they got to move around to different sites. And so that was my intent of the term programming. So that is public use.
Well, and so I was just thinking a $1.5 million varsity football field, you know, if just a group of friends wants to go out there and you know, play around on it.
Oh, I'm sorry, you mean like a park access is
Yeah.
what you were asking about. You know, none of the finite details are hammered down. And so I'm asking for the instruction for them to go back and forth. Now, I would probably suggest, just like Shawnee is not available for that, the answer to that is probably no. I mean, or the prudent answer to that is probably no. Once you go invest in that sort of playing surface and that drainage, then it's probably not set up to be quite the park setting, similar to Shawnee. But
There's no difference right now between Shawnee and Arena. I mean, really, you don't see a lot you see a lot more. I get what you're saying.
yeah,
And that's in the details, I get it.
that gets your question answered.
Yeah, that answered. Yeah, I was just thinking because whenever it comes to adding something like this online, especially if it involves city maintenance being involved, you know, it's essentially adding another park to maintain. And so if it's adding another park to the city's, you know, or maintenance requirement to the city's docket of maintenance requirements, it's just how do you?
Well, it wouldn't be any more if we're not maintaining Arena. fields, which take a lot more maintenance than.
I mean, so you're backing off some, you're also only mowing it for half the time.
But would we completely abandon the arena fields? Would arena go to fallow field or?
I think this is a tool that allows you a progression.
Okay.
And I don't say that it's next year or the 5 years, or, it's a tool that allows that natural progression that's been identified in a lot of planning in terms of long-term arena. You can't invest in arena, you can't build those fields any better than they are because of the limitations and the co-use. There's been conversations about what can we turn arena into in terms of what makes it a better fairgrounds and perimeter access, other things like that. So this is a tool that allows that progression to occur. And also, I think, brings that partnership together, long history of partnership with the Central Pool. I know that we're in the midst of trying to figure out how to do that again moving forward. I'd say this is an easy one, because on October 1st, you can lock the gate, turn the lights off, you don't have to pay for anything. It's just done. And then the school district gets it ready in March, and then you guys kind of slide in May 15th, and then you just run your programming on it, and mow it, and use it when you need to use it. And however, maybe you're using it every day, maybe you're using it once a week. I don't know what that means, but it is the ability to program on that. And it's turnkey and it's instantaneous. I mean, if we do that, then bam, there's 3 fields in the inventory next year while the varsity field's being used.
So the school board has fully adopted this as a master plan, not contingent upon the city's partnership?
Correct.
The school board has approved, did we vote formally? It was presented to the school board members are supportive of this master plan.
This is our master plan going forward for this facility.
But with no contingencies contingent upon the city's.
That's correct.
Okay.
This is what we're going for those facilities. I mean, this is the direction we're going, so for our band parents, or softball parents, baseball parents, supporters, whoever, this is what we're going for. We have that plan.
And if we can find partners along the way to help accelerate the plan, then we're interested in having those conversations.
I think we understand that. Unless anybody's got any other questions, we'll kind of move on to the meeting, and we'll take this up in other business and talk about any direction that we're going to take.
No, thank you, Mark.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
That's all right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Neil, thanks for not ringing the bell.
Communications and reports. Any on the council? Everybody's silent?
You know, I'll add on to the theme that was going on from the beginning of the meeting. I had some house guests this weekend who actually was a musician who was entertainment at a fundraiser I was involved in this weekend. And he hailed from Nashville, and he was very complimentary of Cape Girardeau and what was offered here. They were a young couple and kind of, did the online searching for restaurants and things to do and blah, blah, blah. And they were very impressed. And it just with all that we've seen tonight, there's just a lot of neat things going on. And I think it's spurred by neat people doing interesting things here in Cape. So, yay, Cape Girardeau. I think we're awesome. We're getting, the Nashville people think we're cool too. So, it's good news.
Nashville's a pretty neat town, too.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Nothing? I had the pleasure of attending the Missouri Municipal League meeting this last week. Scott was up there, and Gail was up there. Had a great presentation from a keynote speaker named Sam Glenn on Attitude Changes Everything. It was a super presentation, and I've got a couple of copies of his book if anybody would want to look at it. It's a really good book. My son's reading it right now from one of them. Yeah, an interesting concept. You buy one, he gives you 2. He said, give them away. So I've got them to give away and let people read it. It's really a neat book. He's a world-renowned speaker on attitudes, and it was good. We met with, Scott and I met with about, first of all, I had a meeting with about 80 mayors across Missouri, just with the mayors. And that was a very productive meeting. In the past, I've been there the last 2 or 3 years, and we never had over about 20. So there were 80 this year, and that was pretty amazing. We had a meeting with Home Dock Cities, which are cities in the state of Missouri that have casinos, discussing the issues that cities have with casinos and with all the related things that go along with that. I got to attend several sessions that involved the Wayfair municipal courts, medical marijuana, and creating opportunities for development that were all good meetings. But all in all, it was a good meeting, and it's good to meet with other council people and mayors from other cities and compare what you do to what they do, and you learn a lot of different things. Tomorrow, I get to go to Memphis for the MRCTI meeting. That's the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. And MRCTI was formed about 8 years ago as an organization that supports things along the Mississippi River. And there are about 80 mayors that belong to this group from Minnesota all the way to New Orleans. There'll be about 50 of them in Memphis at this meeting. This last year was a big deal on the river with all the flooding from all up and down the river. And MRCTI has been very instrumental in helping all those affected cities up and down that river with the help they need to get to correct damage from the floods. They're a great organization. They were instrumental in Carruthersville just getting funds to completely rebuild their downtown flood walls. They were instrumental in the Corps of Engineers getting funding for us when we redid the structure underneath our wall. So they help all sorts of things, whether it's structural, whether it's environmental, whether it's economic development along the river. They provide information on different grants that might be available to cities doing different things. So it's again, you're meeting with mayors from other cities, and you get ideas of how they do things and how you do things. We've been very lucky in Cape this year because a lot of our areas, within our city were involved in the flood buyout, and we weren't affected as much. That's not the same across the river. They were devastated. And MRCTI is also helping in that effort. So, that's what's coming up. Gibson Center's got a 40th anniversary Friday. Ryan, surprised you didn't say anything about that. We still have.
I figured you would.
You figured I would? We, I still have the information on the 2019 Annual Freedom Fund Dinner for the NAACP on Saturday, October 19th. I think there are 3 of us and wives that have committed to go so far. So if you're interested in looking at this, I've still got that to pass around. And I don't have anything else, Scott. You?
Just to reiterate a couple things. First of all, I had a good former employee and friend from SEMO gave me my Susquehanna Centennial Brothers of the Brush button, so I told him I'd wear it tonight. So mentioned that. There's been some play on that in the paper, and so he found this and brought it to me. I'm really appreciative of Don Hester. We also had a meeting this week with the Complete Count group. We're trying to form a regional group to work together for the census. The census is so critical to so many funding mechanisms, and we really, as I know they're looking for people to be employed right now, so if you know anybody's looking for a job, it is an opportunity to work for them. And really, we need to begin to spread the word about it's important that everyone be counted, and that there really is, and it's hard in this day and age, but there really is confidentiality in this. No one's using this to find out there's 5 people living in this apartment and you're only allowed to live 3. None of that goes on, but we really need a good count. And so we encourage everybody to be involved and be ready to involve for the count that starts. It's already started, but it's starting next year for the count, and encourage everyone to fill out the form when that time comes.
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
I was in a meeting last week, actually, with a gentleman
gentleman named Thomas McCall. He's a policy director for the Missouri Foundation for Health out of St. Louis City. They have full court press on this issue to really get out the word on the census and the complete count. So I don't know if your group has been formalized as a complete count committee or group, but they have some resources I know available through them as well.
Absolutely. We had someone there from Complete Counts, who's out of Chicago, so very much so plugged into that and looking at what makes sense for us to do this regionally. So some certain things, it's all going to be local, because you're going to have certain ways to get out the information that's going to work in Cape Girardeau that wouldn't work in Sikeston. But there's certain things we're looking at, which is making sure that the message uses the same wording and we're doing all the same messaging at the same time, so that whether somebody is working in Cape and maybe living in Sikeston, that they're hearing that message that's complete and that uses the same words to gain confidence in the message. So
And their group,
that's really important.
Their group is they are offering some grant funds for certain activities around awareness campaigns and to try and drive citizens to be counted.
Good. So we'll be checking that out as well. And then just one of the things we found at the MML conference, the Wayfair, the mayor and I both went to the presentation regarding Wayfair, and I thought it was interesting. In 2018, there was $3.6 trillion of retail sales that was counted in this one survey, and 518 billion of that is online, or 14.8%. If you look at 14.3%, if you look back to 2009, 10 years ago, that was 4.2%. Now then, they aren't exactly apples and apples, because 4.2% is a little bit bigger universe. I think they include food and some things like that in there, but it's growing exponentially. And it's one of those things. But the thing that really caught my attention was, of that 14.3%, 42% of that is Amazon. Yeah, that's a huge, huge part of that. And so that is Amazon basically coming into our communities and affecting the retail economy of our communities. So part of that may be good because you have more choice and you have maybe a better price, but it also really affects people who invest in our community, that pay for the T-balls and do all the things that our community does. So I think it's something that we just want to remain aware of and be a part of. Also, of the growth in retail sales, half of that growth was, even though it was only 14.2%, half of the growth was in online sales. So just something to think about and continue to.
The other interesting topic, that was for 2018. They're estimating in 2019, an Amazon share will be closer to 49%.
They're bumping right up against half.
So they're getting almost half, which is good.
So I have there.
Mayor, council members, just a quick reminder that we do have 2 public input meetings coming up. One Wednesday, September 18th at the Osage Center from 4:30 to 6:30. And then the following Wednesday, the 25th at Shawnee, same time, 4:30 to 6:30. And that is to gain public input on our Transportation Trust Fund 6 project prioritization. So we encourage everybody to please come out and give us your input.
Took the words right out of my mouth. It was right in front of me.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? If not, Mr. Glenn, Planning and Zoning.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. The Planning and Zoning Commission met, Wednesday, September 11th, 7 p.m. A few items on the agenda that evening. We had a public hearing on the request of Ann W. Ritter to rezone property at 621 Perry Avenue from R3 High Density Single Family Residential District to C1 General Commercial District. We had Mr. Gabe Wunderlich represented the developer there. came and spoke to us about the project. Mr. Rick Hetzel asked questions about flooding issues, stormwater issues in that neighborhood, shared some information there. And then Mr. Aiden, who actually lives in the property that will be rezoned, had questions about how long the zoning process takes and whether or not he needs to start looking for another place to live, those sorts of things. So we were able to answer his question, at least in the abstract. The commission voted 6-0 in favor of that rezoning request. We also had a public hearing on the request of Gill Family Properties LLC and Robinson Outdoor LLC for a special use permit for a billboard in the M1 Light Manufacturing Industrial District at 101 North Kings Highway. We had Mr. Wes Bell from Robinson Outdoor come and talk to the commission about his proposal, that proposal. The commission voted 6-0 in favor of recommending approval with conditions that were outlined in staff letter. We also had a public hearing on the request of Cape Retirement Community, Inc. for approval of the final development plan for phase 1 of the Ramsey's Run development located at Bloomfield Road between Benton Hill Road and Cords Way. That was tabled at the request of the applicant. We also had a public hearing on a request of Rhodes Properties LC for approval to modify the approved site plan part of special use permit for Rivendell Court at 3071, 3095, and 3117 Lexington Avenue. Mr. Scott Rhodes appeared before the commission to share his plan there. The commission there recommended approval. Also had a couple of subdivision plats, Shives Addition record plat and Auburn Park Place 1 record plat. In both of those instances, the commission recommended approval with staff conditions being addressed. Those are all of the actions we took on that evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on any of those.
The project at Harry,
At where?
the
Yes.
one where, I'm trying to think of that.
That's over where Ken's Cleaners is.
It's the house right behind.
It's the house right behind it. They're talking about leveling that house and putting some parking in there for that redevelopment.
They closed down the convenience store and that would be
Yep.
part of it. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you.
And Mr. Hetzel asked about some stormwater concerns there, which sparked a little bit of a conversation about,
Just because he owns that property.
yes, it kind of tucked in behind
west
there.
of that.
Yes,
Right.
west of that. There's some discussion about Capitol Hall Park pond overflowing and creating some stormwater issues there. So we talked a little bit about that.
That lagoon has overflowed for years.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Even back in the.
Well, and I'm wondering if the renovation is going to help
But that is
with some of
that
that.
project should start soon, and that should help that, I would think, a lot.
Because they're going to dredge, are they going to dredge some of that? Yeah.
Yeah, part of PRX too.
Julia, is that part of PRS too?
Is that?
There you go.
Think
Well,
so?
it is, and Stan and I, of course, are partnering on that project, which we're researching right now to hopefully start in a year. But as I understand it, part of the challenge is that there's an undersized pipe, that outflow pipe, that sometimes captures that water. There's just not enough capacity for that water on certain storms. So not sure that the pond renovation is actually going to address that fully. Would want to make that guarantee at this point,
Yeah.
but Stan can speak to that if he'd like some more details.
And really what Mr. Hetzel wanted to make sure of is whenever he redeveloped the property that he has, he was required as part of that redevelopment to install some retention tanks, stormwater retention tanks, and wanted to know if similar requirements would go into the new redevelopment of that existing property. And staff was able to assure Mr. Hetzel that stormwater conditions would be addressed as part of that redevelopment.
I mean, that'd be that exact way, but they will have the same outflow before.
More parking will mean more stormwater retention, this is guaranteed.
And that was part of the concern.
All right.
Any
Thank
other?
you.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Miller? Thank you, sir. Any appearances tonight regarding items not listed on the agenda?
Guys going? You guys going? No. What? Hey, my name is Jason Priest, in the name of God, the most merciful, and the most compassionate. I'm here today to talk about a few things. First thing I want to address is baseball. The baseball we just talked about, you know where things are going. Football's dead. Our country's becoming obese. So let's look at that factor real quick. Less people are playing. And then also, as far as city, the 1% has more control of the money because the Amazon, when you think about that. So when you think about baseball, why are we going to have baseball out of town? You know, is the high school the place to have baseball for the public? I mean, Cap Hall's doing pretty good, right? So it's just something to consider for baseball. As far as building the fields, arena building and that. And if the school needs money, they need to get out there and hook it. I remember us selling candy bars and stuff. Let them take care of them, because I believe the school system's dead. You know, you guys can take that. The school was made for conditioning our kids to do factory jobs. That's dead too, right? So let's not go backwards with this stuff. All right, the main agenda for me today is called Express Arrest. I'm naming it Express Arrest. When you're in Cape Girardeau, you get arrested for anything, no matter what, they take you downtown, treat you like a criminal. Even though you haven't done anything, you're not convicted of anything. The cop decides to take you downtown, they fingerprint you, they do all this stuff for the most minor ticket, any ticket, you guys know this. And then on top of that, they leave you there. So you get a ticket, you get taken to the arena building, and dropped off, or the arena park and dropped off, basically. This is insanity. Does any of you agree that that's right? Okay. So, on top of that, with our new laws, somebody, I've asked, who decides to hold one for the same, walking in the street, what is it? Jaywalk. So they take you downtown, leave you at the park, and who decides to hold you for 24 hours? They can hold you for 24 hours on this ticket. You ready for this one? Then they can get a psychiatrist to look at you and hold you for 72 hours. Okay, this is ridiculous. Our city, I'm asking the police chief to resign because our city is out of control with this. You're separating the poor and the rich, and you know it. You got the undesirables that you have your police go and pick up. And whenever we talk about these tickets, who decides to say what the person did? The officer didn't see it happen. He comes after the fact. So it's a trust issue. Now you're going to ask, who called? So you're going to take a statement from, a guy on the street versus a owner of a business, and the owner of the business has more sway to that officer than a guy on the street. And let's go ahead and face it, the cops need to be working on violence. That's all they do. They're not lawyers, they're guardians. They're guardians of our city. And that's just to top on the first one. Let's look up at, it's New York, I think it's 3 years ago. 3 officers walk up on the same thing, guy standing over a body. One of the officers puts his gun away and walks right up to the guy and asks for his gun. Okay, insanity maybe, but that cop we decked him out in all the gear. See, we need, how would I say it? I call them martyrs, you can call them whatever name you want to get them, somebody who protects your society. And the reason that guy walked up on that guy is because he knew his community. We're hiring people, veterans, whatever you want to call them. We're giving certain jobs class, like a police officer is more important than our trash man? No, of course not, right? Yes, they are. You parade them up, are you going to parade up the trash guy for picking up my trash good? No, you're not. So let's think really, really close with what we're doing in this new great city we're building in Cape. I mean, Cape's got all these resources. Cape's got, we're talking about technology. We're talking about a city that has the best downtown on the river, I think, then, you know, we're talking New Orleans style downtown, and we all know it's a beautiful downtown. And as far as revenue goes, the city is raking in a lot of revenue, but that's all we talk about is revenue, revenue. All right, guys, I apologize, but man, we need to get to the people. We need to stop separating the poor and the rich, and we've got to stop express arrest right now. Stop arresting people and taking them downtown. Give them a ticket and let them be on their way. The only reason you're doing all this is to make sure you collect money. Go to the courtroom. All they talk about, what's your address, what's your name? Collect money, collect money, collect money. And instead, right now I'm going to tell you, if you put all the drug dealers on a Yelp system where the good ones have 5 stars, the bad ones have 1 star, you can eliminate all this police business. You know, and that's extreme. I know it's extreme, but think about that for a minute. We're sitting in a city, a beautiful city, that is policing itself. It's the militarization of a free nation. We're policing ourselves to death.
Thank you, Jason, your time
Hey,
is
I
expired.
know, but think about the school costs. You're going to put metal detectors and stuff in the schools soon. You're
Jason,
going to
thank you
keep.
very much.
All right. Express arrest, guys, help me out.
Anybody else? Any other comments from any item not on the agenda this evening? If not, we will move on to regular session and have called over and roll call. Oh, yeah, we better do agenda review.
Okay.
Especially since we've got to change the agenda.
Yes, we'll have, tonight when we adopt the agenda, we'll need to modify the agenda. We'll need to remove number 8. That's the ordinance for the refinancing of the water bonds. We have a good proposal that has been accepted, and but we will need to have an emergency order to pass that tonight. So we will remove number 8, and then we will add a number 17, which will be a new bill number 19-151. And it is essentially the same bill, except that it has the new interest rate in it, and it has the emergency clause. So we will need to read it 3 times and pass it with emergency so that we can lock in this new interest rate. So any questions about that? Victor's here to answer any questions. Is it a procedural change? It's essentially the same bill, but it has to be moved to another bill in order to make it the emergency. We do have one public hearing tonight. It's for the property along Lexington. This is a business property where we had several buildings. The plan called for the next building to be built differently, and so this is a change in that plat to allow that. So we have a public hearing to do that, and then we also have the number 13 is the site plan for the special use permit. So it changes that special use permit. Then we have the consent agenda. Number 3 is the preliminary development plan for Ramsey Run. Number 4 is the state block grant agreement with the Missouri Highway Transportation Commission on snow removal equipment. This is the next step in that. We had the design was the first one. Amendment number 1 now allows us to get the grant for the 95% of the snow removal cost of purchasing the snow removal
I
equipment.
won't ask about it tonight.
Number 5 is the zoning of the property for Ramsey's Run from R4 to PD. Number 6 is the ordinance accepting the construction easement for 2574 Mountain. This is for a water line. Second, third readings of that. And number 7 is the acceptance of the collector's deed for 0 North Main Street in Red Star District. Second, third reading of that. Number 8 is the item we will remove. Number 9 will be a resolution authorizing for execution of the facility lease agreement with Missouri Southwest at the airport. And then the land lease is number 10. This is an opportunity, they would like to build a new a new hangar, and so by changing this allows that to proceed. Number 11 is the wrecker service agreement. This is what we do on a regular basis, where we have to have cars towed. We have an ongoing agreement which gets a good price for that, and so that whose cars get towed aren't charged as much as it's up to others, but it really is a pretty good rate. Mostly, I think towing's $35 and storage is $25 a day or something like that. This is with Sperling's, continuation of that, it's a new agreement. And then it's a architect's agreement with Phil B. Smith for facility improvement projects. This will be an on-call agreement as we have done in the past. And then 13 is the approval of the modified site plan from the hearing. Are there any other items besides number 8 that you'd like to remove or discuss? If not, then we have four new ordinances. The first one is amendment number 4 to the state block grant agreement for the runway lighting. This is to allow more time to finish the documents. I think it ends now, and so it allows at the end of the year to get the documents done. The same thing with the next one, amendment number 3 for the aircraft, for the ARF truck. Again, more time to get all the documents set to complete that grant. Look at those are just an extension of time. Number 16 is the record plat for Terra Estates. This is along William Street and divides to 3 lots that property for residential development. And then added number 17 will be bill number 19-151, the emergency reading of the awarding of bonds. Then we have any questions on those? No appointments tonight. In other business, we have the October council meeting. We had reset that for the 17th, and I believe we're going to be resetting that again to the 16th. After we poll everyone, I think that is the date that will work out for us. We have a closed session tonight, and that's all, Aaron.
We'll also, under other business, take up discussion of the baseball softball. Now, we can have full roll call.
Mr. Essex?
Here.
Mayor Fox?
Here.
Mr. Guard?
Here.
Ms. Kinder? Here. Ms. Moore? Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda
With the changes.
with the changes.
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
Motion made by Ryan, seconded by Stacy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have one public hearing tonight, a public hearing to consider a request for approval of a modified site plan as part of the existing special use permit for Rivendell Court at 3071, 3095, and 3117 Lexington Avenue. Anybody here tonight to speak for the public hearing? Not seeing anyone, I will close the public hearing. Are there any individuals who need to make comments regarding items that are listed on the agenda this evening? If not, we'll move on to consent agenda. Eric?
We need an electrician. Number 19-137, ordinance approving the preliminary development plan of Ramsey Run for a proposed residential development in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Ordinance approving the preliminary development plan of Ramsey Run for a proposed residential development in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Number 19-138, ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute amendment number 1 to a state block grant agreement with the Missouri Highway Transportation Commission for a snow removal equipment vehicle at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport, and ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute amendment number 1 to a state block grant agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for a snow removal equipment vehicle at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport. From 19-139, an ordinance amending chapter 30 of the code of ordinances of Cape Girardeau, Missouri by changing the zoning of property located on Greenfield Road in the city of plumbing utility easement and temporary construction easement from Mary Beth Campbell for 2574 Fountain Drive in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. An ordinance accepting the plumbing utility easement and the temporary construction easement from Mary Beth Campbell for 2574 Fountain Drive in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Number 19-141, an ordinance accepting the collector's deed from Cape Girardeau County for property located at 0 North Main Street in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. An ordinance accepting the collector's deed from Cape Girardeau County for property located at 0 North Main Street in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Number 19-144, resolution authorizing city manager to execute amendment number 1 to the hangar facility lease agreement with DSW Development Corporation at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport. Number 19-145, a resolution authorizing city manager to execute a land lease agreement with DSW Development Corporation at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport. Number 19-146, resolution authorizing city manager to execute a record service agreement with Sterling Inc. in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. 19-149, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the Smith Architect LLC for general facility improvement projects in the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
You have before you the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Guard, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dan. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. New ordinances. Bill number 19-147, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute amendment number 4 of the state block grant agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for design and construction of the runway 10-28 lighting rehabilitation project for the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport.
So moved.
Motion by Dan,
Second.
second by Nate. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Bill number 19-148, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute amendment 3 of the state block grant agreement with the Missouri Highway and Transportation Commission to fund the acquisition of an aircraft rescue firefighting vehicle at the Cape Girardeau Regional Airport.
So moved.
Motion by Ryan,
Second.
second by Shelley. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Bill number, and motion also carries. Bill number 19-150, an ordinance approving the record plat of Terra Estates.
So moved.
Motion by Robbie,
Second.
second by Dan. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Bill number 19-151, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of waterworks system refunding revenue bond series 2019 for the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, prescribing the form and details of the bonds and the covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain actions and documents and prescribing other matters relating thereto. An ordinance authorizing the issuance of waterworks system refunding revenue bond series 2019 for the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, prescribing the form and details of the bonds and the covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain actions and documents and prescribing other matters relating thereto. An ordinance authorizing the issuance of waterworks system refunding revenue bond series 2019 for the city of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, prescribing the form and details of the bonds and the covenants and agreements to provide for the payment and security thereof, and authorizing certain actions and documents and prescribing other matters relating thereto.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ryan, second by Robbie. Any discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. So this is just, the emergency is because of the cost savings associated, right?
And locking.
And locking those savings in.
Yes.
Right.
That's correct. Kudos, Victor.
Yeah.
Extra $100,000.
$100,000, that's a good thing. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We have no appointments this evening. We have a couple of other business items. One was to amend the rescheduling of the meeting for October 21st from October 17th to Wednesday, October 16th at 5 p.m.
So moved.
Motion by Ryan, do I hear a
Do
second?
it again.
Second.
Second by Shelley. Any discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And motion carries. The next item was to ask staff to investigate the baseball softball proposal that was brought before us tonight, and look at how that would help out. If it's going to provide tax savings, if it's going to be more efficient use of fields within the city, both for the school district and the Parks and Rec group, then it poses a viable thing to investigate, I think.
No, I agree. I think that there's a lot to be investigated. We need to listen to, just to hear what the staff's opinion would be, especially after looking at costs and whatnot. Anytime you can save a taxpayer dollar is fantastic. And so by moving this project, you know, closer to the forefront, pushing, you know, potentially other renovations, and if we can save bonding money, then that's a fantastic thing. So I would be interested in hearing what the staff has to say about it.
My only concern is the 60 days. That's pretty quick, and I don't know how that's gonna, you know, I know you said about 60 days, and I would say that I think we'll try to at least encourage staff to get something back to us as soon as we can.
Or as fast. Well, I think, you know, I think with, I like the what I've seen so far. I want to hear from staff on it, but my thought was that I don't certainly want to rush the process. I understand the idea of expedience, but when we are talking about spending taxpayer dollars to this degree, I think we need to be as thoughtful about it as we need to be. And if it takes 75, 90 days, I think we need to go through that process, even if it pushes the project back a bit. We want to get it right. So
I would just echo that, going through PRS2, being on council and looking at the partnerships and opportunities. We've been very good at building things. Where we run into trouble a lot of times is operating. And so when we look at opportunities like this to split some of those operating costs, and quite frankly, to me, it seems it makes sense, especially with the programming days. And the benefit, like Mark said, because of the success of the Catfish, because of the success of Southeast and what we've been able to do at Cap Hall, guys, Legion, Junior Legion, Senior Legion, those are important aspects too that are being displaced. And I don't know where they're playing, but currently if they're playing at the middle school or even at Central, those are not very good shape at all. So I think exploring it further is pretty.
Well, and to be clear, we're exploring.
Right.
I personally would, want to hear a lot more of the detail involved and, the numbers. Because we, like the school district, obviously,
But it's important to hear from our Parks and Rec staff on how this will fit in our whole process and how the sharing aspects work and the cost aspects work. So
that's what I was just,
that's big too.
That's what I was just about to add. I'm intrigued to see if we might have a discussion with the school district about the finance plan. If there's some ratios we can talk about, but anyway, it's all tax dollars, obviously, and the smartest way to do that, is important, obviously. It's kind of interesting as we're trying to nail down this aquatic center, and Mr. Glenn knows better than anyone. Might there be issues with questions of?
Similar. Yes.
Well, yeah, and the process. In other words, it's hard for me to imagine in 60 days being asked to approve something if we don't have bids and firm. If we're talking about playing on something in a year, or was it starting or ending the project in a year?
2021.
Yeah. But starting down a path
Well, that's-
and committing something without knowing.
That's where the investigative process has to occur, and the talks with the school district have to occur and so forth, and we can't make any decisions, so all that happens, so all we're asking is council to direct staff to do that, so.
Right, and
I'm just trying
what I would envision in the short term would be a pretty high-level review of what we're talking about. I'm not sure we can, in 60 days or even 90 days, come back to you with enough information to make even a full decision, but at least to go. I mean, the matching of the field sizes to what the market is one of those difficult things. A lot of market out there for 12 to 14-year-old fields. There are currently 7 fields at Arena within, I'm not talking about the ones that go down Hawthorne, but just within Arena, there are 7 fields. And so can you continue to preserve some of those and that?
They're in town.
The size of the fields and how they match up is big. And then also there is a little more overlap than what we talked about. But those are all things that we need to discuss and look at what that market is, because it's going to come down to the market for, that we can attract, that we can make that return on the investment. So when you have a quad out there, then that's going to have certain ability to generate revenue. This will have an ability to generate revenue, and what's that comparison? We'll take our experts some time to work that out. They'll certainly look at it and get some data together to give you some input back.
Scott, something else I'd like to, hear from city staff on regarding this issue, something Dan brought up, this idea of pushing out projects that would initially be
Yeah.
bonded to pay-go. What that process will look like if those projects could conceivably be pushed out. What would the cost savings be versus the return we would get from doing this now as opposed to what we'd originally proposed to do now.
Right, because we really don't have a proposed location.
Yeah.
There are some ideas out there, but what those are and what the acquisition costs and what are the construction costs of those compared to places where you already kind of have a field.
Right.
So there's really a good appeal to that. But I think it's gonna come out of a lot of those different factors, and
There's a lot of investigation that's got to occur, so all we're asking is just the fact that we want council to direct staff to do that, so.
I'd make a motion to explore and have staff go.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Nate. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session to discuss items related to personnel pursuant to Presided Section Missouri, Section 160213.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.